2 episodes of Conquest later, and the top 5 competitors are all gone from the game. What the hell is happening? Plus, Kyland for Best Actor, the Berna question that never ends. Is James kind of sneakily the best polidicker of all time? Jay maybe earns super status and top of villain status. Michele makes anxiety look great. I might cry having to talk about Ed getting purged. Nurys with the all-time elimination victory. And did I mention that Olivia took a knife to her bestie's chest, like both of them? Not one, but both of them. It's the challenge. Battle for a new champion, episode 16 recap coming up right now. What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future if it's happening in the Challenge universe. We are here to document it, and I am your host and dedicated Challenge historian, Jacob Hollowball. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Episode 16, B-Fank. We did it, y'all. We got to the point of the season where we get one of the best episodes in a long time of the challenge. This episode was absolutely amazing. For all of those out there still hate watching this show and everything else, there's no way you could tell me that this wasn't an amazing episode of this show, wasn't an amazing kind of vaulting up of the overall opinion of this season. For me, one of the few people out here who actually likes this thing, it kind of went up a little bit of a level here with this unbelievable episode. A lot of stuff to talk about. Unreal. This is going to be a long one. Buckle up. You know, sometimes I like to put time limits on myself. Try to make this a little bit shorter. I know it's just me monologuing for as long as the show is on TV some nights over here, but this is going to be one of those nights because there's a lot to cover. I thank you. I appreciate you for being here. And yeah, what an episode. I'm going to kick off the whole thing here with the storylines of one kind of overarching thought, one thing that I think this amazing and great episode and kind of what was solidified in this episode, what it solidified for me about this season and why I'm ready to say this season, as much as it has gotten the hate of a large portion of the challenge fan community, or at least a lot of the loud voices within that community. They did what they set out to do. I'm going to start talking about that very quickly. It's kind of a little considerate. You know, they do mini finals for dailies as, you know, a warm up to the final. Consider this like a 2-minute version of a mini season recap, if you will, that I'm giving you here at the tail end of the actual episode recap. So that's going to be first, and then our typical walkthrough, all of the storylines, again, of which there are many. There is a lot to talk about with this episode, and I do not want to miss any of it. So this is going to be a long pod. Thank you for being here. With that, no other program reminders. B-Fank every Wednesday night until this season ends, which now we're moving quick. We went from 15 to 10 like that. So we're not too far off here. I don't know if it's 18 episodes, 20. We might be watching the penultimate next week. Who knows? All I know is we watched a hell of an episode tonight, and that's what we're here to discuss. So let's dive in. B-Fank episode number 16. Here we go. First things first, this episode was an all-timer, like legitimately. I have not been keeping my grading scale up to date. I have when I did the rewatch series, you know, first 20 seasons of the show. I have a grade for every single episode of the first 20 seasons of the show. I kind of have a grades for like the last 4 or 5 seasons of the show while we've been covering it here on the show. I don't know where this would rank. It's not like all time, like, you know, like let's talk about what are the best 10 episodes of the challenge ever. It's probably not anywhere close to that, but partially because of, you know, how the last few seasons have been viewed by myself included, you know, in the masses, but by the masses, especially here, that this type of episode with this much intrigue, this much entertainment, this just much chaos, everything all mixed into one, packaged in a 90-minute episode is, you know, is a shining star of recent challenge seasons, I would say. And what it did for me, what it solidified for me, and this is the little kind of mini season recap that I'm going to give you here, and then we'll head into the episode itself, is it solidified that we officially have 3 legitimate absolute stars on our hands, and that the franchise has created 3 absolute stars again, that being Nurys, Horacio and Kyland. Those three, without a doubt, are absolute franchise stars now that are beloved, it feels like, by all of the people watching this season, certainly, that are very good at the show, that bring every aspect of the show. I know earlier in the season we talked about Horacio being like, is he male Casey? Is he kind of like the best competitor there who's a little bit wallpaper? That wallpaper was ripped down weeks ago. At this point, he's providing on all levels of the show, and certainly still obviously providing on the competitive side. And he's also providing the challenge accounts. I mean, I get it. He's unbelievably attractive, but the thirst traps that they put out of Horacio are yeah, they're interesting to say the least. I don't know who runs those accounts, but I'd be interested to know. But Kylan, Horacio, Nurys, super duper duper stars for sure of this franchise, and at the same time, dare I say, a super villain in Jay, who is clearly, we're going to talk about in this episode. The community isn't in love with how the season has gone, how his place in this season, how he has run this season seemingly, and how he has treated those around him that are helping him and in some ways allowing him to run the show and run the season. He's a legitimate villain now in this house. And so, I mean, yeah, you've got 3 stars, you've got a villain. I'd bet even most people that dislike this season or hate watching it or whatever would admit to liking 1 or 2 other people, because we got a cast of varied personalities I certainly love a lot. Obviously, for me, my absolute faves: Corey, Ed, Raven, Michele, but also, and also shout out to Berna, who we're going to talk about in this episode. She's kind of filling an interesting void for me that I didn't kind of put together till this episode, of like the spot, the kind of that she was filling within the house that reminded me of kind of an old school character within these houses. And so I think if their goal was to set out of like, we, no matter what the reaction is, we just need new stars, new faces of this show, and maybe even some people to hate on this show again. We need stars, we need villains. After this episode, they've done it. They've got 3 big stars, 4 for sure, and they've got 1 big villain. Now, that was obviously the biggest thought I had about this episode, but it's only because there's so many things within this episode that it just, I had to get that out. I know this is already going to be a super long podcast, and I started with an overarching full season type of thought before I even get into the episode. That's just how jacked up I am, how jazzed up I am. This episode was amazing. I loved every second of it, except for the seconds when all the people that I was rooting for went home, which was a lot of them, and one in particular, but it was amazing. Now to the actual storylines, walk through the episode here. So starting with the house segment and starting with the very open, I was super curious about. I was hopeful that it being Kyland in particular, who has mentioned, has studied the show, has watched at least all the recent stuff. Maybe he's gone back. I'm interested to find out. I know he's done a bunch of the interviews recently, so I'm sure he has said. DM me and fill me in if I'm missing anything on what level of fandom and historian he might be rocking. But I assumed he would be the one, if anyone was going to think through hey, we've got some information from this elimination that they don't have. We shouldn't tell them. We should do something about it. I was hoping he would do something. I did not expect it to be what he did, which was amazing. Him and Horacio pull off the classic fresh meat challenge move of, well, let's lie about this exile. Let's give them no info or wrong info or both. And they come in. And although we barely get to see the results of their lies, it was still amazing nonetheless. So first off, Kylan's acting is fantastic. Give the man an Oscar. Unbelievable stuff. I can't believe he pulled this off, like, honestly, because do the others, like, it's one of those moments you're watching from far, you're not there in the moment, so who the hell knows? But when you're on the couch just watching, you're like, wait a minute, they don't believe this. Like, he's acting really well, but like, they think he went through something that has left him so distraught that he's like unable to speak to them or to say anything. He has to turn his back and get emotional and just walk away. But it totally works. And again, I think in the moment there, it would have worked on me too. But on the couch, you're like, wait a minute, are they not thinking this through? It couldn't have been that bad. Like, yeah, his best buddies went home, but like, was it that bad, But he pulls it off. I fucking loved it. And then Horacio pulls it off. They play it off well when they get there. I was a little worried at first when they go into the Olivia breaking down and everything, and Kyland gives the confessional of like, I didn't think it was going to go this far. I'm thinking there's going to be the little record scratch, and Horacio is going to come in and like not know what's going on, and Kyland's going to be like, okay, I lied to everyone. Thought we were maybe heading in that direction, which would have been its own form of entertainment, but we weren't. They pull it off. They're both in on the joke, the prank, the whatever you want to call it. The one person who is not, and we don't know yet, I'm guessing we'll maybe find out next week, or she'll put the puzzle together, obviously, next week. But Olivia, oh my goodness, it's just too perfect knowing now, what we know, where this episode goes, immediately looking back to how this episode opens and how unbelievable it is that it kind of bookends with those two things, and that she's so upset, feels like, Horacio sacrificed himself for me, and then he went home and she's all torn up, and then he walks in and she's just overtaken with joy that he's actually back, and she doesn't know what to do, is giving him space. It's incredible theater in the moment. And I mean, I'm hoping that, Kyland and Horacio, who, again, Kyland references like maybe this went too far into confessional. I'm hoping they're at home able to sit back and watch this back, knowing what eventually happens in this episode, and at least take some solace in not having to feel bad after the fact about lying and causing Olivia to go through this moment of anguish and pain and reflection, because of where obviously things would go. Now, we don't get to see anything after this. This moment's amazing on its own, but we don't get to see, like, does anyone ask questions eventually? Do they tell Nurys right away, like a little bit later? Do they tell anyone else? Anything like that? So we don't get the full, like, true callback to, CJ and Sydney back on Fresh Meat 2, trying to, when they famously, Brandon had a little morning beer before the exile because they were injured and not able to compete. TJ says, you don't get to compete at all. CJ and Sydney, you don't get to run, you don't get to practice, none of it. They lie to their alliance about what went down and try to come up with what they were trying to do. Wes and Evelyn slowly but surely sniff through it, and they have to admit they lied to their entire alliance, which is ultimately kind of a little bit of their downfall. Not that it wouldn't have been anyways. We don't need to do a full Fresh Meat 2 podcast. One of those is available back in the feed if you would like to go back and listen to that. But I would be interested to know what questions were asked, who was told what, but good job by them disclosing the information, or not disclosing the information, pardon me. And then Kyland also lets Berna know that, yeah, it's you, it's not us. He says what a lot of people in the house seemingly have been wanting to say over and over, and just kind of, I don't even remember how it got to be that they were the ones arguing with each other. I think Berna was just trying to do the, like, I was sad for you guys. And she says, I'm removing the game from it. I'm just like, on the human level, use your emotions. Like, I was sad for you and I wanted you to know that. And he's like, nah, you didn't, and whatever. And just back and forth. Fantastic. But, and in that moment, I'm like, I think we finally have the answer to the chicken and egg question we've asked a couple times with Berna of, like, is she actually kind of aggressive? Is she great on you a little bit? Is she kind of a tough hang from time to time? Or is it, as she has said before, of like, it's a little difficult for me here to begin with. And then someone says that I'm these things, which kind of makes me become those things. And it's a little unfair. And we don't know a ton about her background and the whole thing. It just becomes this big chicken or the egg question of like, who's actually right here? What is the situation actually like? And at this moment, and with Kyland, and I'm like, yeah, I think Kyland's telling us which is the real answer. But then boom, conversation, Berna and Emmanuel talking backgrounds, talking their moms, and we don't get a ton of the actual, like, info of exactly what went down, but clearly Berna had her struggles with the familial relationship and the mother-daughter relationship, and has, as she says, a lot of trauma and a lot of things she's working through because of that, and trying not to be, or trying not to emulate. And so then we're back to like, man, I just feel for this woman and what she's trying to overcome. And again, that it's just like, now her and Emmanuel are like the two, we started the season with a bunch of the folks, international folks. We're down to those two in Kyland that are still there. And it definitely still seems to be one of those things where Kyland and Emmanuel are kind of like fit in with the group a little bit more, have more to be able to relate to, have maybe just kind of ingratiated themselves into like the culture of reality television and America and everything else. And Berna's just got a lot going on that is causing her to be who she is in that moment. And so we're left, as always, just being like, I don't know if I love this woman, if I would be totally annoyed by this woman. I don't know who's right, who's wrong, but I'm rooting for her, and I'm interested that every time she's on screen, which is a huge win for the show. Then we've got the daily challenge and yet another callback. I mean, this season has been, especially the last handful of episodes, a lot of callbacks to OG days, directly, indirectly, by happenstance, or what have you. But this one couldn't have been more direct. They basically just bring back the exact game they played way back, season 6, Battle of the Sexes, iconic win when Ruthie, and one of the most impressive feats in challenge history, legitimately one of the most impressive things that's ever been done in the history of the challenge. Ruthie, I think she was going last. I think she was straight up the last one to go. Exact same challenge as we see here, rappel down, fastest one to the bottom without falling off wins. And in this instance, they won for the male team or the female team. And what they won was cars for all of the people left. And this is circa 2001, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Yeah, challenge 2000. Yeah, 2002 maybe. They got a bunch of Nissans. They were great. It was a huge prize in those days, and for the whole team. And all the men had basically all the best times, but it was just one person. Winner takes it for their team, brings the prize home. And Ruthie, one stop, just holds the thing down, flies to the very bottom, lets go, and literally catches the last inch of this rope. And it's unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense that it's even possible. And she did it, and it was amazing. And that's why one of the many reasons she was the MVP of that season back when we did it on the rewatch. So it's a great challenge. They call back straight to that. At this point, they should do more of these, use old, simple challenges from the past that were good and were worthwhile, and bring them back and get us through the daily challenges quicker during the episodes as they do here. So great challenge overall. What is not great is the fact that Ed lost. And this is a tough one. As you know, you've been listening all season long. You know, I've got 3 favorites on coming into this season that have remained in favorite category. That would be Michele, Corey, and Ed. And Ed was arguably the top one. I adore this man. I adore him as a cast member on the challenge. I think he is quite literally checks every box we're wanting for, every single one, even the smallest little ones. You could put as many boxes on the page as you want. He would check every single one of them as far as what I'm looking for in a cast member on this show. And I really enjoy his presence on the show. And I also just happen to have thought by this point, you know, I had him back and forth in the top spot on the power rankings. I feel like he was going, if he gets in this final, he wins this final, and he blows it. He blows it. Because the moment James falls, James should be gone. It's if someone falls that quickly, that early, one of the first to go, they fall, it's over. Everyone else should be playing it safe. And I get that that's just not Ed's style, but it's the he loses on a brain fart of sorts, because you've got to know, yeah, you want to keep impressing, you want to keep winning, you're the competitor, you want to try to do your best, but you've got to look around and say, well, my alliance is led by a guy who is a dedicated rock climber. He's been around, he's rappelled quite a few times. He's been around this system a lot. If one of us has to really legitimately try to win and all the rest of us get to play it safe, that guy, Jay, is the one that's going to try to win, and obviously ultimately does do just that for your alliance. You've got to be able to just put the ego down, put the competitor down, put the having fun down, and just casually drop 2 or 3 feet and be like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to rely on the old alliance in this one. I'm going to rely on that social game that was played very well by him. And he doesn't. He kind of goes for it. He slips at the end. He falls. He gets purged. I'm heartbroken. I think he wins the final versus anyone in this house, point blank, period. I just think he does. I think he wins the final versus a lot of others that could have been on this season as competitors. I think he would win the final versus a lot of current champions that would still be on seasons. I was torn up when TJ doesn't even give him a, I hope we'll see you again, or I can't wait to see you again, or nothing. Just says a thanks for being here. That's not a good sign. So didn't love that. And yeah, I'm heartbroken. I can't believe Ed's gone. I can't believe it happened so fast. I still love that they're purging people. Of course, can't be biased about the opinion of the format just because my favorite person goes home. But I was pretty torn up, and I am just fingers crossed, toes crossed, pray into the challenge gods. Give the man a call, bring him back. Let him be a champion one day in the future. Then we've got the house, the club, and everything kind of that leads up to nominations. We're going to split this up into 2 segments here. Okay. We're going to do the backstab and the nomination here in a moment. But first, let's cover some of the other ground, because again, there is so much to talk about and so many things going on and happening on the screen in this episode, and as well as kind of off screen in the background of what's going down in this episode. Starting with the fact that I think it's time to ask the question, how good, and I don't think, I doubt many people listen to this with like their children in the car while they're driving or anything like that. I don't usually come with a parental advisory, but for 15 to 30 seconds here, parental advisory in place. How good is James's dick game? Like, for real? Like, how good? How good must he be in bed and the pillow talk and the everything that comes with it? Because I just don't understand. I don't understand. And I also don't understand, is Mariah just secretly like the most fun person to hang out with? Like the best friend you've ever seen or heard of? Does she call you every single day in the real world to like catch up and like tell you she loves you or whatever? Like, and we've just not witnessed like any of it. I don't understand, because these people are so beholden to like Mariah's in this group, and if she says James is in the group, then so be it. We're not going to really push at all. Like, how is this so hard for the Alliance to be like, hey, there's only two of them left. Three people have to go into elimination. So literally, we are at the point where someone from our Alliance has to go in, unless we all tell one of the people in the Alliance, hey, we've reached the point where your boyfriend doesn't get a pass anymore. I'm sorry. You can either go into elimination with him, or you can allow us to send him in and wish him the best and hope that he legitimately hope that he comes back. But that's what it's got to be. And no one will do it. And I've got to give Michele her flowers here, because I am biased and I love Michele to death. And so maybe you don't want to do it, but I will do it. She deserves, is the only one that at least at a minimum brings it up, that like, you know, well, first off, she did tell off Jay last week. She's still obviously working with him and is dealing with the repercussions of being so closely tied to him, but is at least acknowledging those things. But she is the only one at any point in this to push back at all on Mariah during the conversation in the bedroom, where Jay is yelling at Michele again for some reason and shaking the list in the air for some reason. And Mariah is, James's name comes up. Mariah's like, whoa, 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 no, no, no. And Michele at least like pushes back a little of like, like, I'm trying to ride for you and Olivia and Nurys and people that I've known for longer than 5 weeks. And sorry, your boyfriend just doesn't make the cut for me. And ultimately, doesn't push hard enough. I would have loved to see someone like actually just make this easy call that I thought was an easy call. But she does not. But at least mentions it, and eventually does pick Olivia, which, yes, we find out she does expect Olivia to fuck her friends over. But I don't think you could be positive Olivia, like, you couldn't have been confident Olivia was going to go through with that plan. And so Michele does at least leave the door open here for this to go, in the favor of Horacio and Kyland and Nurys in the end. Anyways, it's just a long way of saying, like, James should be in the bottom. Jane, Michele, and everyone else should tell Mariah she can be in the bottom with him or not, but that's how it's going to be. And just like end it right there. It shouldn't be that hard for them, and they're making it that hard, and it just leaves me wondering just how good is that deed that James is slinging. I mean, I can't help myself, man. One of the best polidickers we've ever seen. Gotta say it. Now, Jay, we mentioned before, shaking the list in Michelle's face, shaking the list in a lot of people's faces, that whether they wanted to or didn't want to look at it, most of them did not care to look at it or listen to him, but he was still doing it. He's yelling at anyone he can. The lists are everywhere. He's saying basically anytime he, at least the one thing I will give him, he realizes that, like, yeah, we're in the situation where someone in our alliance is going in with them. Someone's going to get mad. There isn't an out here. And so, as I've been doing in these moments, I'm getting a little bit of pushback. I'm getting a little bit of adversity. I'm going to just respond by kind of yelling and telling everyone it's their fault. And maybe that's not a great response, but he kind of leads with the like, yeah, sure, fuck it. I don't care. Every idea that's brought to him is basically like, yeah, that doesn't sound good because one of our alliance members goes in, and that's all of the options we have. So I don't care. I'm saying Michelle's name. Y'all figure it out. And then when you come back to me, I'm going to yell at you some more and show you my list some more. And that's what it's going to be. And it's honestly kind of amazing. Like, he's being such an asshole to Michele, of all people. Of all people, she's the one that kind of gets it the worst in this episode, I think. Last episode was Nurys, and it was like, what are you doing, man? But we said last week he earned his, the villain status in this episode. Like, I don't know, he might be vaulting to supervillain status at this point. It's just, yeah, it's something to behold. And yet he does still, and as part of that, he doesn't press Mariah on needing to put James in or else. Like it is the easy decision he has. Is like there is one person that wasn't in our alliance, and I am also the least close. We thought I would seemingly of all the women that are in this alliance, he's least close to Mariah. And so it shouldn't be that hard, but it seems like it is. And the last thing I'll mention on his account though is the edit does need mentioned. It should always be mentioned. I should bring it up more often than we do that this is an edited program where they're trying to build storylines. Yes, you have to give them the material. You have to actually do the action, say the things for them to use, but they can be selective in what actions and words that you put out there that they then use to create the storyline that they think is going to work the best for the show. They know what they're doing. And they know that they're doing the villain edit here. They know they had to anticipate that this is clearly they've created, both in the house, this big underdog. The best competitors are these underdogs that keep getting thrown in storyline, and that Jay is leading the other side, and that no matter what was going to be viewed in some way as kind of villainous, skating, running this just big alliance, classic storyline that they've told countless times before. And when he gives them some material to be like, you can go from just the guy that skated and ran the big alliance and, kind of dominated the house to everyone's chagrin, or we could go vault you to the villain status. And you gave us some stuff to work with. So we're going that way. Now, am I saying that the unedited versions of these conversations, if we saw the full things, every bit of it, that it would make Jay look better? No, I don't know. It could. It certainly could. It also could certainly make it look even worse than it is. So both of those are on the table. There's no way that it's making it like overall that if we watch the whole unedited thing, we would come out of it and be like, actually, Jay looks amazing. What are all these other people's problems? Like that's not in the realm of possibility, regardless of what we might not be seeing here. But it, he gave them the ammo to make him the villain. They're doing that. They believe it's the best thing to do for the storyline of the show. I agree with them and I'm loving it. And I just thought, though, it is always worth mentioning when we get this kind of visceral reaction to a character on a show or to a cast member on a show that they are being edited in some way. And so, take it with a small grain of salt, but that grain of salt doesn't change the fact that Jay may or may not have earned supervillain status after the last 2 episodes. Speaking of villains, it's finally time. The only thing that's kind of an issue when I run through the episode sequentially here is that, the lead gets buried from time to time. There's obviously one thing in particular of all the great things about this episode. There's still one standout moment that we're going to remember for a while and that will have implications for a long time to come in this franchise. And that is our pal Olivia. My goodness. I'm right about cast members sometimes. I'm wrong about cast members sometimes as far as my opinions or who are my favorites or who are the ones I'm just kind of not vibing with, this, that, and the other. I'm probably wrong as often as I am right. And I also am rarely like actually kind of like out not vibing with a cast member. It's extraordinarily rare that I'm like, I don't like that person. And Olivia certainly does not fit in that category. There's very, very few people in the history of the challenge that fall into like, I straight up don't like that person category. Not like I don't like them as a cast member on the show. Like I think I don't like them as a person. She's far from that. But I was, I definitely wasn't on board with the fan train after last season, came into this season not feeling that way. And now I feel like I made a good call because my goodness, did she blow it here? Okay. First and foremost, mentioned editing last segment. Shout out to the editing team. This episode was edited amazingly. They set up everything beautifully, perfectly. It was just unbelievably well done. Every single decision that they made for this episode. Shout out to the editing team. Usually I don't love the flashback stuff. It works. It's a great storytelling device. They've been doing a lot more of it the last couple of seasons, and sometimes it works really well and I can enjoy it. And the other times when it just kind of falls flat, I'm like, if it doesn't work super well, then might as well just not even do it. If you're not actually going to be able to elevate, if there isn't something to be elevated there, then, maybe don't use it. But boy, does it work on this one. We're in the dark. We think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just me. Maybe you at home disagreed and sniffed it out yourself. But when Michele says Olivia and they go to commercial, I was legitimately stunned. I was like, oh my gosh, Michele took the heart when Jay does, to his kind of credit, I guess, like the smallest credit against, the biggest list of debits and credit. Yeah, I'm going to get the accounting reference wrong here. But anyways, Jay gets the smallest amount of credit for saying at one point, when the you should have a truce is offered of like, look, I'm not hunting anymore. You guys can honestly do whatever the hell you want. Like, it's fine. He kind of gives the like, it's fine if you want to just like save all them and maybe, maybe we'll figure that out down the road or whatever. It doesn't seem super genuine. I think he still obviously wants what happens to happen. But so I'm thinking Michele says Olivia. I'm like, oh my God, Michele has had enough and wants to be loyal to her friends. And boom, like Horacio, Kyland, Nurys, here we go. And then suddenly, bam, backstab for the ages. Just maybe front stab. This might have been straight to the front, right to the chest. Might not have been a backstab, maybe a little chest stab here. Olivia, in one decision, goes from, she was possibly like one of the faces of the show, faces of the franchise. She was really beloved. And I think even throughout this season, and certainly in this particular episode, was where, like, at the open, where I was like, man, we had heard through the grapevine, if you're at certain challenge manias that she was at and stuff, and then certainly everything that had started popping up online, like, we knew there was a split between Olivia over here and Nurys and Horacio over here. And we've mentioned it throughout the season of coverage of like, we're waiting for this to happen because we kind of know in the real world, like, this has happened and we assume it starts on this season. And then like it kind of starts to happen. But then over the last few weeks, it's like it's not going to happen. They're actually going to grow closer and actually are back in an alliance together. And like, what is going on? And so then it just works so perfectly that the tables completely flip, turn. She has made this deal without their knowledge of like, nah, I'm good. I'll ride with Michele, Jay, and Mariah. That's my crew here. She stabs them. And in one decision, she goes from like, you could be a face of the show, you could be a beloved cast member, to like the pariah of the show, whose only shot now, like, legitimately, I can't believe it fell this far. I feel like her only shot at redemption is if she is lucky enough that they do a Rivals season for season 41 and they give her Nurys as a partner and we have some redemption between that and like some new star power between that. That's the only thing I see safe in this now. I feel like she just fell from grace immediately with one little decision. And yeah, like, it could have been so opposite. She could have literally became the face of the show if she, in this moment, lies to Jay, Michele, and Mariah's face, says, yes, I will pick you, and then says, that guy stood up for me. That's my ride or die. That's my best friend. And I don't care. I'm going to stab those three in the back and not my best friends from the last season. And she would have, says Nurys, it would have been unbelievable. Then they would have showed the flashback. Jay and Michele would be stunned. Mariah would be stunned. James would be like, wait a minute, I finally have to go in. Well, that's probably fair. And yeah, it would have been unbelievable moment. And it still is in this. It just unbelievably bad for her. And I think for people's opinions of her. And yeah, again, boy, does she got some options for rivals pairs if they do a rivals season anytime in the future. If it's male female, if it's female female, either way, she book her with Horacio or Nurys, no doubt about it. And yeah, it's just, whew, can't believe she did it. And the last thing, I guess, the last couple things to say about it is just, other than it was just shocking a little bit, but that, she says in confessional that it like sucks that Nurys was waiting around for her to fuck up, and then she did. And that seems like backwards thinking to me. I thought that was really kind of, if I'm watching that and I'm Nurys, I'm like, oh, what did you just say after I have to relive all of this? And that's how you respond with, no. I wasn't waiting on you to fuck up. I was waiting on you to prove my brother or me right and my brother wrong. Like, I heard some stuff from my family and I was like, nope, I'm going off my opinion, my stuff. And I believe in this person and I believe it's going to be okay. And then it wasn't. So you did prove her brother right, but you didn't prove Nurys right. And that's what you were being challenged to do here. And I felt horrible, absolutely horrible early in the season. not even that early. I think it was only a few weeks ago. But when we found out, Olivia had the guilt over how the final went last season, when she had a freak accident that was traumatic as hell, painful as hell, absolutely horrifying, and absolutely not her fault at all. It was just like the most unlucky, unfortunate, tragic thing that could happen to someone in one of these finals, and that she had, that guilt around it of like that ended hers and Horacio's season, and that sucks. And I wish she wouldn't have felt that way ever. I hope that she has gotten past that, saw the truth of the situation, which is there should be none of those feelings. It makes sense how that happens, and how our messed up brains that we all humans have talk yourself into that. But I felt absolutely horrible gutted for over that particular feeling, because that is just, you go through such a traumatic event in your life, and have to have these other like negative feelings. Like, that's such bullshit. Felt bad, super empathetic for her for that. Hope she had gotten over it. This season, though, this season, though, you cost Horacio the win. Maybe, probably. I don't know. The puzzle skills, last week we thought we checked that box for him. This week we learned that maybe, it's not a slam dunk for Horacio in a final. I mean, if there's a lot of running, it might be, because he's going to have such a big lead for those puzzles. But yeah. 0% cost Horacio a win last season. 0%. This season, though, kind of on you. Kind of on you. And yeah, because of that, whoever does win this thing maybe owes Olivia a little bit, maybe slide her a little 10K off the top there for in one fell swoop, helping to knock out the top two contenders, as TJ would put it, that remained. Now let's talk about those two contenders exiting the game, because they lost to Nurys. Win for the ages. Hell of a win for Nurys here. Now, these two, in these two being Kyland and Horacio, have all the advantages going into this. They've done basically the same thing before. And by the way, I should say this before I forget. I love that it is Exile-esque. It's the same thing. We change the puzzles, but it's the same thing every time. You come to the same place, you run the same little obstacle course, same length of everything else. We switch out the puzzles from time to time. I can't wait. I really hope that they reuse puzzles in the future again, same way as they kind of did on Exiles, or reused different little portions of it and gave the advantage to the people that were thrown in over and over. Although now Nurys is the only one with that advantage, but even more reason to want to have the advantage for her in the future. So I loved everything about it. I love everything about how they've shaped this, other than, same as I said last week, I do wish it was male week and female weeks and it wasn't mixed. But they do get the big wins like this moment, the same as they get the big kind of losses last week. Although this week is also a huge loss, because we have these 3 stars that have now been created, and one of them knocks out the other 2 at the end of your episode, which is tough for the rest of the season. But I can't wait for the beginning of the next episode. That's for goddamn sure. But yeah, these two have done a version of this. They get like a 30 to 45-second head start off of like the opening run and jumping over the portions, which I love. Nurys's little quick reaction of like, what the fuck? Like, what the hell, when she sees the big blocks they have to jump over, and how easily the 2 guys are hopping over it. And it's just like, I love her so much. But she beats them all the same. And she takes out, as TJ continued to say throughout this, the top 2 contenders in the game. And TJ, I mean, he was besides himself during this whole thing. He's clearly having so much fun. I love getting to see him like openly, just unabashedly rooting for people. He's just like, yeah, I like you guys. I want you guys to win. I get to see a lot of what goes on here, and I get to watch, be a part of the nominations again this season. And I'm rooting for the 3 of you. So this is a good time. Love seeing that from TJ. But in the end, this is a puzzle elimination, make no bones about it. Yes, they get the little head start because they can run and jump a little bit faster to open it, but it's a puzzle elimination. Let's be clear. And I had faith when I saw it, and TJ says only one of you gets to go back this time. I was like, sorry, Horacio Nurys. Like, Kyland's probably got this in the bag. Like, I feel really good about his puzzle skills here, and then his quickness between the puzzles and everything else. And I was a little shocked how the tangram badly it threw him off. A little bit shocked, to be totally frank with you. Same with Horacio, who again last week I was like, okay, check that box, man. Like he did great with these. He's, only had the count the squares on the beach a couple episodes ago moment where you like would question his puzzle bona fides or math bona fides or anything. And so we thought we had checked that box. And do I maybe feel like not that he was trying 100%, he was definitely trying 100%, but that his 100% in this moment was tamped down by the fact that a part of him couldn't fully be locked in. Because he was partially locked in on his best bud Kyland and his girlfriend Nurys, who he's fallen for, going against him. And certainly right there at the end, it just felt like that tangram puzzle was kind of almost put together for a minute there. And again, it's editing. Who knows? I don't know how long he actually stood kind of close to having it done, but it didn't. Again, he was giving his version in that moment of 100%. It was not like, I do not think he was like, she got the lead, like, let's let her win or anything of that nature. But I think all three of them had some version of, this isn't going to be my best, because just mentally, how could it be? I'm kind of rooting for the other people as much as myself, and that's a weird mental state to be in as a competitor. And it's why I thought Nurys, after dropping the pegs the couple of times, I was like, I feel like, because we saw her almost like quit and like kind of pack the bags earlier in the episode and say, like, I'll sacrifice myself for them. So I thought, she gets the lead and I'm like, holy shit, she's gonna whoop their ass. Like, she's not just gonna win, she's gonna like whoop them. Like, this could get embarrassing really quick for these other two. And then she drops it a couple times and Horacio gets all the way back to the tangram, and you're like, oh, I feel like Nurys maybe is gonna kind of like that mental block of like, I am going against the boyfriend and like best friend here, and that's gonna get in her way. And it doesn't. She overcomes it. She gets the win. Class act from Kyland and Horacio in defeat, cheering her on. Three amazing cast members, seemingly amazing people, super duper stars of the show at this point, for sure. Guaranteed spot on the next season if they wanted, I would have to assume. And I feel like as long as this show lasts a handful more seasons, I will also say about the two who exit here at the end, Horacio and Kyland. If this show goes on for, at least another half dozen seasons or so, then I think both of those two will be champions one day. But not today. Nurys still in the cards. And final shout out to the editing crew. The end of the episode, then, her walking back in the house, the little narration, confessional narration over the top of it, the music mixed with all of the flashback Nurys Olivia best bud moments. Then Olivia saying to Michele, Jay, and Mariah, like, yeah, I'll pick you guys over them, no problem, not like no issue. Just the setup, it was beautifully edited, unbelievably done. And I am so amped for next week's episode now because of it. So just unbelievable stuff all the way through. Unbelievable win for Nurys. As always, go check out Challenge Stats on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, social, at Challenge Stats. They did some great stuff as they do every single episode typically, but in this episode about the 3-person eliminations and male-female eliminations, and kind of where Nurys stands with other females who have knocked out multiple males in an elimination, and other one person winning a 3-person elimination situation. So go check out all of that stuff. This was already going to be too long. I didn't need to add in another history lesson, but shout out Nurys, shout out to Kyland and Horacio. You're gonna be missed. I would have loved to see one of you win, but it's not going to happen this season for either of them. Now on to the awards, and for best quote this week. Now there was a ton of great options during the episode. There was obviously a lot of shit talking. There was a lot of colorful back and forths. There was a lot of things that probably could have been written down to give the quote of the week for, but I do want to point out for those, maybe didn't stick around for the last moments of the episode here, a little bit of a somber award for the best quote of the week, and that goes to Jared Marsh. If you stuck around to the very end of the episode, they did a an in honor of moment at the end of the episode for Jared Marsh, who is a member of the production crew of the challenge, who lost his battle with cancer. I think I saw on his site 4 days ago on the 27th, so over last weekend. And so they did a little dedication and, honored him at the end. And it came with one of many quotes of his. There's a wonderful site you can go to, teamjmared.com. So it's Team Jared, but with an M between the J and the A, teamjmared.com. When they share it, and he has a bunch of quotes on there, and you can donate to the cause of helping folks who are going through cancer treatments to be able to afford and pay for those who are not able to do so on their own. And I really loved the quote that they put up of his, and I really loved that they kind of shined a light on the cause and on their fallen production member and great challenge family member and friend and everything else. So his quote at the end was, "I'm done looking at time defined by days, weeks, and months. I have an unlimited number of moments if I slow down and appreciate them. These last few months, I've had some of the greatest moments of my life. I have learned that every moment is worth enjoying and remembering." End quote. So I want to give him the best quote of the week, and I really appreciate that they shared that. And again, if you missed that, or if you want to go check out the site or potentially even donate, teamjmared.com. As for then, we will get back to the regularly scheduled awards here then. Best moment of the episode. I mean, kind of an unbelievable slate to pick from here. Pretty hard to only pick one. As stacked as a best moment category for an individual episode is going to be. We've got Kyland's acting job and Olivia crying over Horacio to open the episode. Unbelievable. We've got Kyland versus Berna immediately after that. Fantastic. We've got Jay yelling at Michele. Either one of the times you pick. We've got Michele's overall anxiety, not mentioned in all of this coverage. As always, the great Alan Aguirre tweeting throughout the episode, has the screeners and everything up front. So he's got the screenshots, the videos, everything ready to go and tweet out. And he did one of his many fantastic tweets during this episode. He has many great ones during every episode. If you somehow are on Twitter and like the challenge, but don't follow him, you definitely should. But he had an unbelievable tweet of like four images of Michele in this episode of like just looking horrified, anxiety written all over her face, and had the caption of like, you would think Michele has every enemy in the house, but this is what she looks like when she's dealing with her alliance members and her best friends. And it was so funny and so true of like just anxiety all over that woman's face all episode long. And she makes it look good. She pulls it off as good as anyone pulls off anxiety. But yeah, definitely had a lot of it. And it's not great when that all comes from your best friends and your alliance members. So maybe pick some different alliance members next time around. So that gets a nomination. Olivia, obviously the vote for Mariah, gets a big nomination there. Can't have the best moment without that. Nurys shutting Berna up, shutting Jay up, kind of shutting everyone up. Pick any of the times that Nurys put some people in their place throughout this episode. They were all fantastic. And then, of course, Nurys getting the win and having to say the goodbyes to the other two at the end of the elimination. All of these fantastic, fantastic moments. But let's be honest. Again, there is one headline of so many good things in this episode. There's one headline from an entertainment perspective. This moment, best moment, as always, is not my favorite moment, is not the moment that makes someone look the best, anything like that. Is the most memorable, more or less. Olivia voting for Mariah gets the win. As for episode MVP, we've got the editing team. Got to get an honorable mention for them. An honorable mention for TJ, because again, he's having an amazing time. And then Jay, Michele, Olivia, and Kyland. Throw Horacio in there somewhere as well. But obviously, the MVP of this episode in the end is Nurys. Then finally, we've got our power rankings. And boy, I don't know if you noticed, but we've only got 10 people left. We lost 3 people in this episode. And across the last 2 episodes, we have lost Raven, Zara, Ed, Horacio, and Kyland, who were the 5 people that I thought could win this season. And I thought the 5 best competitors left in the house 2 episodes ago, and all 5 of them are gone. So the power rankings are quite different these days. And the men, there's only 4 men left. There's 7 coming in the episode. Now there's 4. That was quick, huh? So on the men's side, the top 3 were all gone. The 3 people that left were top 3 last week. So new top 3 and now full top 4 here. I've still got James in 4th. I don't think he has any chance of winning the final. I have Corey 3rd, Emmanuel 2nd, and I've got Jay in 1st because I have a slight nervous more basically of those 3, Jay, Emmanuel, Corey. I've got nervousness about all of them, but I'm slightly more nervous about Corey's distance running, especially if it ends up being at elevation, or Emmanuel's puzzles if he's doing them solo, than I am about any of Jay. Like Jay's biggest one would be like if, suddenly you got to carry the 100-pound backpack for a big stretch of it. And, that's going to be a little easier for the other three. So I'm just a little less nervous about some of Jay's things that make me nervous than the others. But I think any of those three men, if a male wins this, any of those three could do it. On the women's side, I've got Michele first, Nurys second, Mariah third, Kyland fourth, Berna fifth, and Olivia sixth. And Berna and Olivia, first and foremost, are at the bottom because I think they're just not going to be in the mental state to be able to win the final. And especially Olivia, after this episode, there's just no way she can win. No single way that mentally can lock in a way that can win a final after what she's going to be feeling and going through, and that Nurys is going to continually remind her of for the rest of the time in this house. So I've got her at the bottom just because I think mentally it's just not going to be able to happen. And I don't mean that like she's plenty smart enough and everything else. I just literally mean like you've got to be locked in, ready to go, amped up, kind of having a good time going into a final to win it. And I don't think that's going to be her existence the last few days in this house. And so I've got Michele and Nurys in kind of at the top. And I kind of feel like it's between one of them now. And it's like, again, I have nervousness about every person left in this game, all 10 of them. There's no clear cut favorite anymore because the 5 people that I thought were the clear cut favorites were all eliminated within the last 9 or 2 episodes of this show. So my predictions are also completely just tear them up. They're over. We'll look back at them at the very end of the season and we'll laugh at how wrong I was twice at the preseason and midseason, both times. As for my wishes, none of the wishes I made last week happened. That's okay. The Supervillain Jay did happen, just in a different way than I anticipated. And so yeah, obviously I didn't wish for my favorite Ed to go home. So in the future, new wishes to make, and hopefully these ones maybe could be granted. Please, 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 for the daily challenge next week, let Nurys or Corey or Kyland win. Nurys obviously preferred if she wins. That would be amazing because she literally has no one in the house anymore. So it'd just be hilarious to see who she picks. But Corey or Kyland, I think at least like they're now we kind of find out in this episode, it's alluded to, and there's too many storylines going on, so they can't really touch on it much. But Corey confirmed during the episode this week and last week that like by this point in the game, those two were like kind of newly each other's number ones because they knew no one else was going to pick them in the lineup. So they had to kind of get together, and Berna was kind of in on it as well of like, if we can attach ourselves to Berna and she's attached to Emmanuel, and then we can kind of sneak our way up the rankings here a little bit. But I think those two at least have an outside chance of like keeping Nurys around, keeping things interesting, given their placement and their acknowledgement of the placement. So let one of those three win the daily, please, please, please. And please, somehow, some way, just it doesn't matter who wins as long as it's not Mariah or James. I need to see Mariah and James in that elimination next week. It's got to finally happen here sometime. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, guess what? I don't think either side in that situation handles the situation anything like Nurys and Horacio just did. Confident in that. And then finally, how do we get Michele, Corey, or Nurys to win? How do we do that? How do we do that? I'll do whatever it takes. That's all I'm looking for now. Of these 10, I mean, I need Michele or Corey to win, but it's not settling. I'll certainly celebrate loudly if it's Nurys. One of those three, get them a win, please and thank you, challenge gods. And please and thank you. And the please part's kind of weird. You already were here and listened, but thank you to all of you who have stuck out with me. I don't know how long this episode was, but it was quite a long one, and it was deserved because the episode of the challenge was amazing. So I hope you thought it was as amazing as I did. As always, if you think I got something wrong, or right, if you want to tell me I got something right, that's cool too, or wrong, or just something I missed, opinion you've dying to share, a question you've been dying to ask, hit me up at Challenge Historian on Instagram and send those my way. Also, Challenge Mania this weekend in Chicago. If any of you are going, definitely let me know. I will be there. Say hello. Let's grab a picture. Let's chat. If you're not coming, or haven't been to a Challenge Manias before ever, one, definitely do it. They're worthwhile. But two, also, I believe the lineup this weekend is Tony Raines, John A., Corey, Mark Long is there co-hosting with Scott, and then Tori Deal. I think those are the 5 people with Scott that are going to be there. Mark, Tori, Janae, Corey, and Tony. And so if you got a question for any of those, I'm actually, I always struggle. It's so hard to come up with, like, in the meet and greet lines, like, I want to tell them how much I love them, but then I want to, like, ask them like one really good question each. So if you've got any really good questions for one of those people, let me know. Maybe I'll ask them it. Maybe if they're okay with it, maybe I'll ask them it on camera. We'll do a little live Q&A in the moment, send it out after the fact. So send those my way as well. Thank you as always for being here and listening. We'll be back next week for what I'm sure is going to be at least a great opening of an episode, if not a great episode all the way through. Thank you as always. Love you. Appreciate you. Peace.